something happened to her along the way that she was told she's not that big a deal. Why wouldn't we get paid for that exchange of energy? And why feel bad about that? Should I be spending money on myself? I didn't want to be seen as flashy. That's not me. It's not my brand. We've got to stop, take our fingers out of our ears and say, okay, let's get close with our numbers. Sometimes this shocking financial situation that a woman will find herself in, where they had no idea how big the mortgage was, or they had no idea that there was other debt out there.
Welcome to the Old Chicks No Shit podcast for midlife women who are ready to rewrite the rules and create their kick-ass next chapter. I'm Jennifer Arthurton, and each episode we dive into reinvention, resilience, and unapologetic pursuit of your best chapter yet. Because midlife is not the beginning of the end, it's simply a new beginning. Let's dive in. Today we are going to be talking about something near and dear to my heart, and that is around financial empowerment for women. Did you know that overall, women are 80% more likely to struggle with money in retirement than men? Yeah, let that sink in for a minute. And we're going to unpack all of that today. So we're going to with my guests, we're going to get into the hows, the whys, the whats, and what we can do about it. So my guest today is Libby Wildman, who has 35 years of financial services and planning experience. She is the co-founder of a company called Davis Ray, and she has a passion. She's passionate about empowering women to help them wade through the details and the emotions so that their money is a tool to help them serve the life that they want to live. And I love that so much. She also runs retreats and experiences to help people understand their purpose and to work on their relationship with money so that they can achieve their goals. So welcome, Libby. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you. Thank you so much. One quick thing. I'm not a co-founder of Davis Ray. It was two people, Doug Davis and David Ray, 40 years ago started it. And then my husband bought it 12 years ago. And then I joined him in 2018 so that we can offer our clients more, because they didn't have anybody dealing with all the emotional side and the planning side of investments. They were making people money, but weren't necessarily helping them with what are the goals or the objectives or the hang-ups around that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really good, because, and I think that makes you pretty unique in the marketplace, if I'm not mistaken.
I think there's lots and lots of planners out there, and there's lots and lots of people in our services, financial services world that help people with goals and objectives. I think that's what is unique through personal experiences and through client experiences, is understanding that society would have us believe that wealth is really just physical wealth, that's all it is. What are the toys you own? What's the size of your house? What's the size of your portfolio? Right. And therefore, that puts a lot of pressure on people who are struggling with that part of wealth. And what I have created and truly believe in after decades of listening to people, really open up about a lot of the things that go on with wealth and how it makes them feel. And, you know, women tend to use the words like shame or embarrassed or inadequate or dumb. But what I figured out is that it's really a symbiosis of 7 perspectives of wealth that live in a complete circle. And we can get into this later if you want, but there's physical wealth, there's community wealth, there's family wealth, which, you know, doesn't necessarily mean blood family, because, you know, I have an estranged brother and some of my really good friends to me are family. There's linguistic wealth, which is you have a voice that is heard and where you can make a difference. And really, as humans, we're always underachieving or overachieving in one or two of these. And so how do we really identify and recognize where we are to then be able to either fill up the bucket of the financial, physical wealth that might not be where we want it to be for a healthy and a really, you know, wonderful lifestyle? Or do we have lots and lots of money, so we're actually sort of overachieving in the financial wealth bucket, but we're underachieving in how we feel about what we're doing with that? Are we giving back? Are we supporting our family? Are we building a life that brings us joy? So I want to encourage people to think about money as a tool, versus as something that defines us.
I love that perspective so much because you're right. Like it is talked about in very one-dimensional, like how many zeros are there in your bank account? And, as they say, money doesn't make you happy. So building a well-rounded life with money as a tool, like doing something that feels purposeful or meaningful in your life with money as a tool to help support that, like that to me feels like a very unique perspective. I have never heard that. So
what's really
amazing.
interesting, Jen, and sometimes I get a bit of pushback on this, is the fact that sometimes very, very wealthy people are also unhappy. Yeah. So, we've always heard money doesn't buy you happiness, but sometimes having too much, what we find takes away somebody's ability to feel that they have purpose in life, because they wake up and they say, well, I don't really have to work, or I was given this money. It's not really mine. They have shame around the fact that it was inherited. But, you look at Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, he spends, it's either $25 or $29 million a year on security. If you think he's working for money, he's not working for money. There's something bigger pushing him. But his family and his girls and himself, he has so much of it that it's causing other issues. And so much like, those personality tests you can take, PACE or whatever, what I'm working to create is something where we can actually work with people to say, where are you on this symbiotic thread, this circular thread of your life where money is just one perspective? Where are you? And what are the stories around making you feel that way? Because they all end up coming from our childhood.
Right.
And then how do we balance it out? Because as humans, we'll always be out of alignment at some point or another. So how do we get back into flow?
Yeah, that's amazing. Why do you feel it is that women are more likely to feel disempowered around money? Like, why would women experiencing that more than men, do you think?
Yeah, it's so funny. I every time I see a woman like drive by in a hot car, or I see the hot car and then I look in the window and I think, oh, it's a woman. Awesome. Love that. Right. And, it was funny. I was a single mom for like 20 years and I drove a Ford Flex for 8 years because I had 2 boys who played football and I needed the third row to put some big kids in it. And then when all my kids finally left home, my husband, we just got married a year ago, he was like, why don't you buy yourself a nice car? It took him a year to work on me to feel, A, that I was worthy of buying a car, because I had such issues around, should I be spending money on myself? And B, I didn't want to be seen as flashy. That's not me. It's not my brand.
Right.
And so I just think women are so often taught that fly under the radar screen. Otherwise, you'll be told that you're being aggressive, or, and the same thing that with cars. And then I don't know about your household, Jen, but I mean, my mom, I was very fortunate, was a stay-at-home mom for a number of years until they got divorced. But my dad handled the finances. My mom was actually given an allowance to run the house. Like, what happened in your household? Wasn't it your dad?
It was both of my parents, but my parents both struggled with money. Like, there was a lot of like, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but like, there's a lot of familial conditioning around money, which I see in myself. Like, I catch myself in it all the time, right? Like, so their parents struggled. Both my parents came from really, really big families. They weren't super wealthy, like, so money was always like a topic that wasn't really a good topic.
Yeah.
Right. And I see that, like, I completely see that in myself. So
it's the intergeneration. Yeah. It's the intergenerational conditioning, and it's not, just about money. I had a client I was working with, and again, her dad grew up in a large family and they didn't have a lot of money, and he often couldn't afford shoes. And so when they emigrated to Canada, she said, her dad instilled in her in this fear that there will never be enough. There will never be enough. And when I started working with her, she had a couple $100,000 sitting in her bank account doing nothing. It had been there for years because she had this vision in her mind that there might not be enough someday. And so there needed to be this money just in case.
Right.
And the polarity is that the money over all those number of years could have been working for her and bringing her comfort and confidence and security towards the future. But so what I worked with her for a long period of time was to identify what was the story she grew up with, that she was so afraid to have this money work for her, and then for it to feel empowering versus frightening.
Right. Right. Because you mentioned at the top, like there's a lot of like the conversations with women around money are like related to shame or I'm not smart enough and all of that type of stuff. Like, where does the shame come from around money? And like, again, why are women more predisposed to that? Like, do men have shame around money?
They do, for sure. And I think we're also in new times where men and women, may be coming closer together as to how they feel about things.
Yeah.
But I think the shame for women is we were not, listen, I hate being called old. As my daughter says to me, you're older, mom. So, old chicks.
Yeah.
But, our generation, we were not taught in school how to handle money. We were not
That's
taught
true.
how to have money work for you. Sure, we might have taken economics, but nobody was explaining to us, mutual funds or stock markets. I mean, mutual funds were new when you and I were growing up. It was a new product. So I think the shame comes from around not understanding which questions to ask, not understanding who to ask, and not wanting to appear dumb. So you stay in this darkness of, I don't know where to get the information so that I feel better about being able to manage what I do have.
Yeah, because you're right. It's not rocket science, but I can see that, especially if the person that you are asking is a man, maybe, right? And feeling a sense of like, oh, I should know this. Why don't I know this? Like I can see how that could kind of makes you a little bit vulnerable or feel a little bit vulnerable, related to money.
Yeah. And there's also, I mean, certainly for me, when I was bringing up these 3 kids and I was thinking my money should go towards them, not me, right? Because we're so taught to be the caregiver and to be selfless. And so if I had extra money, I wanted to send them away on a special trip and not me.
Yeah, that's actually a really important one too. So this notion that like money for yourself or spending money on yourself or even like investing for your future has the undertones of selfishness as opposed to giving to your kids.
Yeah. There's an interesting new report out, Jennifer, about people a little bit older than us, but people who are in retirement. And it came from the US, but it doesn't really matter because the sentiments are similar in Canada, that there is about 30 to 40% of parents in retirement who are subsidizing their adult children's lifestyles, vacations, food, rent to the tune of about $1,600 a month. And that these parents will either come out of retirement or be willing to go into debt to do this.
Wow.
And so it causes 2 issues, right? First, we're putting these retirement folks in a place where they're not going to necessarily live the lifestyle that they had hoped to. But also, it's sort of funny, as their adult kids grow older, they then start to feel the stress of having to support their own parents when they're not even that great with their own money. So I often have conversations with clients to say, stop it. Stop giving them money. They need to learn to live within their own lifestyle. And, it's, so then you get this polarity of, the parents think they're helping the kids, and then the kids feel guilty they're accepting this money, and they may not feel very good about themselves, like, oh, my parents don't believe I'm capable. And then on the other hand, then they find out down the road their parents depleted themselves financially, so now they have to, while they're maybe trying to bring up a family, help their parents. And so where do people get the advice? Because it really is a form of therapy. And there's so many scammy things on the internet today where you and I have seen this on Instagram and Facebook, and some woman says, oh, I used to be $40,000 in debt, and now a year later, I have $1 million in investments. And it's just like, that's such bullshit. How?
Yeah.
Tell us the how, and let's make it really simple. And the biggest thing anybody can do who is struggling, if they can, is to live within their means, spend less than what you're making.
Yeah.
However, we live in a society where you are constantly being screamed at, give me your money, give me your money. So I did a thing for Shopify about a decade ago when everybody was in their early 30s, and we identified $8,500 a year of things that could have been removed from people's lifestyle budgets. So how many times are you Uber eating? How many times are you taking Ubers? Then there's your eyelashes, your fingernails, your yoga, your computer, your telephone. And you and I did not grow up with those offerings in our 20s.
That's true. That is so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I was at a spa this week on a Monday afternoon. And I was really, really surprised by the number of people in their probably mid to late 20s, early 30s who were spending the afternoon at the spa. And I said to my girlfriend, I was like, we never even would have thought about, taking an afternoon, like a Monday afternoon being at a spa. Like that was just not something that was within our radar. And I was like, it feels like it's a very different mindset towards money than we had, like instilled from our parents, which was, work, which had its own downside as well too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is a very, very different mentality, I think.
I think there's a couple of things at play. I mean, the younger people that I work with who might be in their late 20s to early 30s, they have a lot of pressures. I mean, they are all getting invited to these very expensive weddings with these, out of country bachelor and bachelorette parties, which
True,
again,
yes.
Like when my best friend was getting married, we went downtown, had some drinks. I think we dressed her up in a funny old wedding dress. And then we went to the fire hall station and convinced the guys to let her put on the fireman's outfit and take pictures. Like it was really simple, right? But so what I find is if you're making good money, like I have this one young woman, she's making $115,000 a year, but she can't save. And even when she got an increase in income, she can't save because of all these pressures, but also to save $5,000 or $6,000 a year, I was like, why? Like there's no goal. There's no objective to it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. So, I think at some point people think, like in our generation, it's like, oh, I should have started this earlier. I should have started younger. Like, what do you do if let's say you get to be your late 40s, your mid 50s, and you're like, I'm behind. Like practically, where do you start? And well, so first of all, I guess there's two questions in that is, how do you overcome that shame? And it really is shame about, I should have been better in my past. And then, get to a point where like, okay, I can start taking some action that will, move me in the right direction. Like, how do you counsel somebody who might be in that scenario?
Well, first of all, we've got to take our fingers out of our ears, and say, okay, let's get close with our numbers. And I don't mind actually walking through that with people because some people may say, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. But first of all, sit down, make a date with yourself on a Friday morning or whatever morning you want to choose or afternoon and spend an hour. Review your credit cards. What are all the automatics? Is there anything there that shouldn't be there? What are your hard costs? So what do you have to spend every month? Yeah. So what's your rent? What's your car payment? What is your insurance? What's your gas or your TTC or whatever it might be? So what are your hard costs that you really can't do away with? And then what are your variables? And it's unrealistic to say, I'm never going to go to the movies. I'm never going to go out for dinner. But let's just start with get clear around your numbers. I had another woman I was working with. She had a mortgage at the bank for $150,000, and she had $150,000 sitting in her bank account. She was so worried, again, because she was in her own business and income wasn't being paid to her once a month, that she needed to keep that $150,000 available for herself. And she didn't even know the interest rate she was paying the bank. So she was paying the bank 5.5% for the privilege of keeping $150,000 in a bank account where she was getting 0.25%.
Right.
So the bank's winning all the way to the bank, as they say, every single day on that. So we talked about it and again worked around the comfort zone. She paid off her mortgage, and honestly, she emailed all her relatives. She was so excited to say, and she had lost her husband, and so she was dealing with finances on her own. But she was so excited to say, everybody, I am debt free for the first time in my life. And that was just getting her to actually, we literally pulled up her bank account. We looked at what the interest rate was. I looked at how much she was paying. So let's get clear on your numbers, because the monster is never as scary as it is in the dark. Pull it into the light and let's see what you're actually making, what you're bringing home, what you're spending, and is there any room? One of the other things I find, Jen, is if people are thinking they're going to inherit money in the future, everybody hears a lot about these massive amounts of wealth they're going to be passed on. And truly in my business, I see a lot of it is being passed on while the parents are alive. But if they think that that's coming, they often don't save for their future because they're like, oh, I'm going to get this money.
Right.
And unfortunately, there is a lot of money spent on the last 6 months of your parents' lives. And so there may not be that amount of money that's coming to you, or they may end up giving it away. But a lot of times, retirement homes in Toronto can be anywhere from $6,000 to $12,000 a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. Okay. So what I heard you say is first look at the numbers, like get clear on it, like what's coming and going, where are you spending? And the other thing that you said is once you get close to the numbers, it won't seem so scary. Because I think that's a really important point, because if we have the seeds of shame around money, those will grow in our head, right? Yep. Like it'll seem much bigger than the reality of it. Yeah. Do you see that? Yeah. And
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, the other thing that I hear so much is, well, I can't afford a house, so I will always be broke. And as Canadians, it seems that we have this birthright that we're supposed to be able to buy and own a home.
Right.
Now, again, I don't know where everybody's listening from, but Toronto's one of the most expensive cities in the world. So why is it we have this mindset that if we can't afford a home in Toronto, we will therefore never be wealthy? And so we work with people around, is it important for you to live in the home that you're in? Because maybe you go and buy a house in Orangeville and you rent it out. And so then that becomes an income producing asset for you. So maybe you stay living in Toronto if that's where you need to be, but we need to put in place automatic savings, because a mortgage really becomes an automatic saving, right?
Right.
So we need to decide, let's go through the budget. What are the hard costs? What are the variable costs? What do we want to set aside for entertainment? And then say, okay, what can we save monthly? So we need to save first and then spend later, or there'll never be anything left over.
Right.
And real estate can be a terrific asset if it's going to be a long-term hold. And the terrific thing is, if you do a rental, that you have someone else paying your mortgage for you.
Right.
So we're seeing more and more younger people buying a house, let's say in Hamilton, and then they rent out the basement to help augment the mortgage payment. Or they're buying a place in a small town that they'll never live, but they will, again, have somebody else pay down the mortgage for them. And then when they hit retirement, that becomes an income producing asset.
So after so you talked about getting clear on your numbers. You talked about like where you can save money. Where do you counsel people to manage debt? Like, is that like the first thing that you do? Like, or is savings more important than debt?
100%.
Okay.
100%. If you have credit card debt, Jennifer, at 21%, the amount that you're going to owe is going to double in 5 years.
Yeah.
I have to, I actually put this on LinkedIn. Last year, I got my Amex statement, And it said that if I just pay the minimum amount, that in 99 years, it'll be paid off. And I was like, that's embarrassing that their algorithm actually allows that to be put on my statement.
Yeah.
But we've been hearing more and more of this. Actually, it was written up. I think Rob Carrick wrote about this, that the banks are offering 30-year amortizations. We've seen 50-year amortizations. Just because your payment is lower doesn't mean it's a smart move for you. You are paying so much more money in interest, and you're never being encouraged to actually become debt-free. So it's really, you have to find an advisor that you trust, and has your back. And you can do fee only, because our industry has a bit of a bad rap, really, because unless you do have money to invest, or unless you need to buy insurance and stuff, it's hard to get advice. And there are some advice only people, which is great. But you need to take a look at debt, because let's say you have a line of credit that's costing you 7%, and you have money invested and you're making 7%. It's not a wash.
Yeah.
Because the investment 7% you have to pay taxes on, and the amount of money that you're paying debt on at 7%, you have to probably earn 10 to pay off the 7, because we have to make $1, and depending on your tax bracket, you got to make $1 to keep 70 cents. So, sometimes it's just rearranging the buckets of money that people have. They have debt over here and they've got an investment over there. So sometimes it's just bringing awareness to where they're letting it leak.
Yeah. And I think you just mentioned something important there too, is about the asking for help, like finding somebody who, like if you're feeling very, uneducated on the subject, and, really, I don't know what to do next, finding somebody who can help you. But I think if there are people who, might have been struggling or don't feel like they have a lot of money, they're like, well, who's going to want to talk to me, because I don't really have any money anyway. Right. So good to know that there are advice only people out there to start with, as a place to start. Or maybe it's even a friend or a family member, who knows.
Yeah.
But not being afraid to ask for help. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of the banks in Canada, the branches, have some very educated people, because it's true. I mean, we have a $500,000 minimum. And so that's obviously not accessible for a lot of people. But I have had some really great stories of people going to the banks and having a really wonderful advisor there who's talked them through the debt. You have to understand the platform you're working on. So the banks get compensated when you open up a line of credit, when you do a mortgage through them, when you open up a new bank account, when you buy a new credit card. So go and get the advice, but also have the discipline to not be talked into buying all those things, because you will still get the advice. There's terrific books out there, but one of the fun things is, why don't you have a little study group? It's not a book club, but it's a money club. And if you get together, and we did this with a group of young people where everybody said, okay, we're only going to do Uber Eats once a week, or our budget to go out to the movies or buy wine or whatever it is, let's say it's $100 a week. And when they get to the $100, they call each other up and say, will you come over and hang with me tonight, because I'm at the limit of my budget, or I'm at the limit of my budget and I so want to go out. And the other person's like, no, we have this commitment. And so, you make it fun, and you stand by each other, or you're standing there buying that dress and say to yourself, I'm going to walk out of the store, I'm going to come back in an hour, or I'm going to come back tomorrow. Because there's also that, adrenaline rush that we get from Instagram, pushing the button on your phone to say bye. So there are some disciplines to understand the psychology of what our world wants us to do. Walk away from the Instagram, come back tomorrow, and see whether you still want it. Or show a friend and go, what do you think about this?
Yeah. I love the idea of creating community around it. You know what I mean? Where you have kind of a support system. Because again, like, not feeling alone in something, like, just, gives you that much more courage to keep going, right? Like, to,
100%.
Yeah. And so I love that, creating little money groups. It could be investing groups, it could be saving groups, it could be whatever. But I love that idea of, getting
maybe it's your friends, maybe it's a family member, whatever, getting people around a particular goal that you have financially to support you, just like you would any other goal.
And just sharing, right, Jennifer? Like we do sharing circles where women just say, yeah, this is what happened when I was growing up. Like my mother was an alcoholic and we could never pay the bills, so the electricity went off. Or, my parents got divorced at a young age. Or my dad had 3 jobs. We never saw him, but, we always had food on the table. Like there, as you talked about, these intergenerational hangups. And when you share them with other people in the story or in the circle, you're always so shocked to find out that other people have hangups too. And so putting them on the table. So I've also met lots of people, Jennifer, who are really, really good at savings, and then they never take a vacation or they never give themselves a treat. So I like to have different bank accounts because you can go now to a no-fee bank account. What is the point in paying one of the big fives, $20 a month to have, some sort of a bank account where you have checking rights or free transfer rights or whatever? There's so many bank accounts out there that you can get for $0. So I want you to have a fun bank account. So what are your goals and objectives for travel this year? Oh, I want to go on this trip. It's going to be $3,000. Okay. So let's put, $280 or whatever it is a month into this travel account. So when you go on the trip, you feel awesome because it came from this account that's supposed to be for that, versus, oh, I took it out of my TFSA, or, now it's on my credit card and I've created debt. So have these different silos. And, so if people think that's too much work, like there's always workarounds, but that's my favorite thing is if you have different bank accounts that have different objectives, so that psychologically, the savings bucket, the just in case bucket, the Libby fun bucket, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And so as you're talking, I'm thinking it's really creating intentionality, right? Like being clear on what it is that you want, like setting your goals and then planning for it. Right.
Exactly.
As opposed to kind of going through, like you said, going blind, not paying attention, just like, I'm just going to go do this and this and this. And then, then you have the hangover of, well, I had a great trip, but now I'm dealing with XYZ. Yeah.
There's amazing things also from a confidence point of view. Like when my brother was renewing his mortgage with Equitable Bank, he phoned me and he said, Lib, like they're going to renew my mortgage, but there's a $3,000 fee. And I was like, what are you talking about? There's no fee. And so he sent me the letter and I was like, wow. So then I phoned our mortgage broker and I said, have you ever heard of this? And he said, oh yeah, they'll ask for it. Doesn't mean you have to pay it, but they'll ask for it. So again, it was just this confidence to question, first of all, should I be paying this? Then knowing that actually it's not appropriate and you don't need to, and then having access to somebody. So question. Right. Go to the banks, get them in competition with each other, and consider using a mortgage broker who can also help you set up lines of credits, can maybe find you private money if you're having credit problems. But a mortgage broker gets paid by the bank, so they don't cost you any money, but they might be a little bit more friendly and hold your hand and help you with what you're doing.
Yeah. So a lot of the stories I hear are, women who have maybe they've let their husbands or their spouse handle the finances, and then death, divorce, whatever happens, and now they're in this place where they have to like take over and they don't know anything about it. Like, what do you say to that person? Same advice, like just get help.
Well, also Jen, you and I had talked about financial infidelity.
Oh, yes, I was going to get to that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can't tell you, at times of death and divorce, sometimes the shocking financial situation that a woman will potentially find herself in, where they had no idea how big the mortgage was, or they had no idea that there was other debt out there, or they had no idea the spending habits that was going on. Yeah. And what's interesting about that is not only is it stressful because now you either have less money than you thought or way more debt than you thought, there's a violation of trust as a couple and as a family that you think, well, what else were they doing that I didn't know about? But it's a deep violation of trust between two people. So, again, if it's really debt related, you might even end up working with a trustee, right, in bankruptcy, or working with somebody who can help you to negotiate your credit. So if it's debt, first you need to get a hold of that and try and get the interest rate down as much as you can. A lot of people don't know you can negotiate with CRA. You can phone them up. They're real people, and you explain your situation and you say, this is what I can afford. And sometimes they will either knock down the debt or they will work with you on a payment system. But if you don't address debt with CRA, they will actually just penalize you and charge you more interest and penalties and stuff. So part of it is make the phone call, get clear on things and negotiate, because credit card companies will negotiate with you. The banks will negotiate with you. I've done this on behalf of some clients. But you absolutely have the right to negotiate someone's debt and understand what is your debt and what is not your debt.
Right. That was the thing I was just thinking, like, even if it's not, let's say it's not even divorce, like, let's say you're married and you find out about financial infidelity, like, how do you protect yourself? Right. So if you've been relying on that person, how do you then, protect yourself in that situation?
Yeah. In some situations, unfortunately, you can't.
Yeah.
We had a situation with a client where the spouse had actually faked her signature at the bank. So then you have to say, do we sue the bank? I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, so in some cases you have to figure out, how far am I going to go? I think the point is, if you find out about it, which had happened to me personally, my ex-husband was making investments and doing things in my name. And I was really worried that I was going to end up in trouble. And I was really worried, what else is he doing if this kind of thing is going on? But I would really encourage couples, if you can, hopefully before you move in together, before you get married. I used to laugh. People would call me up and they'd say, oh, I'm dating this awesome person. At what point should we get into finances? And I'd say, well, are you sleeping together yet? Oh, yeah, that's not a problem. That part's great. And I was thinking, it's so funny that in our generation, like, getting between the sheets is no problems whatsoever. But talking about a balance sheet is the biggest taboo, right?
Yeah.
So get transparent as you're coming into a relationship. But if you're married, I really, really encourage you to at least once a month do a full transparency with each other. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm doing. I have my own bank account, my own credit cards. I think because I was on my own for 20 years when we got remarried, I didn't want to have to, completely, say, well, are you going to, I'm putting this on a joint credit card. I want some independence. But, if John's making a big investment, or I'm making a big investment, or let's say I'm even planning a big trip with my kids because he has his own kids, I'm going to discuss it with him because that's just respectful.
Yeah.
That's respectful. So once a month, do the open kimono and just say, where are you at and how much debt do you have? And then depending on the strength of the relationship, if somebody's really got them into trouble, should the other spouse bail them out? I don't know. That's going to depend on the personality of the people involved. And should we be cutting up the credit card of that person or lowering their limits or making the fact that the credit card should be paid off automatically? There's first getting clear with your numbers, right, Jen? Having transparency.
Yeah. Yeah. And, especially if we're getting into relationships later in life, right? Like we're both bringing assets to the table. But I feel like, our generation especially grew up where money was this very taboo subject. Like you didn't ask how much
Yep.
people made. You didn't talk about money. And, like if you did, you were considered, to be showy or flashy or whatever. And I feel like that growing up in that with that shroud of secrecy around money is actually probably, cause people to struggle more, right? And to be able to, like, you're going into a relationship, somebody, you're combining your lives and still talking about finances is that like, oh my goodness, kind of conversation, right? It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that we've created that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And there's also this fear around somebody who owns a house and then they get married and that other person's moving into their house. So now that becomes a family asset. And if there is a marital breakdown, that house is split 50-50.
Yeah.
So, part of what I also do is talk to people about prenups and saying, is this something you want to discuss? And you ask young people about prenups, and most of them will tell you, I would be completely insulted if my spouse wanted a prenup. And my first thought is, well, why? Are you marrying for money? No.
Right.
And did this person bring it into the thing? So, so it's just, or, if you're common law, you don't split assets, but you're responsible for each other's lifestyle. So if somebody got married, or if somebody was common law and they were living together and they had 2 kids and then they split up, the person who wasn't working is still entitled to a certain lifestyle and for those kids to be appropriately looked after, but it's not a splitting of assets. If you get married, there is a splitting of assets in all of the growth from the date of the marriage forward, or the principal residence automatically gets split. So I find there's a lot of young people who don't want to get married because they don't like that idea of assets being split. And again, I just think, have somebody lead the conversation for you. Because when I lead the conversation with a couple who are considering getting married, it's not personal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice, is to, bring in a third party, have it, as a conversation, not necessarily a relationship conversation, but a financial matters conversation, to take taking it personally out of it. Yeah. That's interesting. That's great advice.
Well, you know how opposites attract. So like everything in life, in a couple, you usually find one person who loves to buy things and be a consumer and have a happy life. And then there's another person who came from a family where they were always taught there might not be enough. So they become a saver. And money can really, really affect the long-term nature of a relationship. So it's actually really important that you understand each other's cultural backgrounds, stories that you grew up with, and how that affects your money spent. And you don't have to necessarily bail each other out unless it gets, if it gets really dangerous. Like somebody getting deeply, deeply in debt can actually be really dangerous for the other spouse.
Right.
So yeah, it's I think financial conversations are as important to your health as what do you eat? Do you believe in working out? And all of those things.
Yeah.
So I think sharing of stories, what was going on and why you are the way you are. I mean, I saw a couple of people in my family growing up who had horrific financial things happen to them. And so I made a promise to myself in my early 20s that I would never be broke. And I became a very, very good saver. But I think to the point where maybe I was a bit of a control freak about it too. And so that could have caused some problems in the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, and you've alluded to this a couple of times, is, first of all, understanding what money stories you have inherited, like from your family, the way your family grew up, what your parents talked about money, and understanding where those come from, and realizing that you don't have to live those anymore, right? Like, so if it's a lack mentality or, whatever it might be, that you don't have to carry that forward. And I think that can give you a lot of freedom as well too, from, if there's any shame associated with it, with, maybe you're, trying to play catch up on your retirement, those types of things, right? Like I think understanding that and sharing those, I think is so important. So I love that you mentioned that. One of the things I heard you talk about, or I saw you write about, I think it was, is about finding meaning while also saving for retirement. I would love to dig into that because I feel like there are a lot of, and I'm going to say this, I think there's a lot of people, but I think it's especially true for women who are maybe opting out of previous careers that they, are feeling burned out from, or, you know what I mean? And wanting to pursue something that feels meaningful for them. And then they feel like they're caught between the, I have to continue in this career to continue earning, you know what I mean? And continue saving for retirement versus taking a risk and stepping out and doing something different. How do you help people navigate that, or any advice? Or
Yeah, I mean, this comes back to these 7 perspectives around wealth.
Yes.
And, I don't know when it was, Jennifer, a decade ago when The Secret came out. And, if I really, really prayed that a Mercedes was so important to me that it'll show up in my driveway. And it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. No.
However, when we're looking at the fact, if you have strong community wealth, if you have educational wealth, if you have linguistic wealth, which is where you have a voice heard in your community, if you have physical wealth, so that you have energy and the health to be able to go out and do new things, then if your financial bucket is less than, if you decided to take on a part-time job or to do some sort of a side hustle, then if you have the community to present it to who say they will help to support you and get the message out there, if you have a voice where people care about what you say and why you're doing the side hustle or why you're getting the second job, and then if you have the energy maybe on a Saturday to go and hit the farmer's market or whatever it is, then your financial bucket will actually start to get a little bit bigger. And I see people today doing 2 or 3 jobs where maybe one is 2 days a week and another's a day a week and something's at night. We live in a world now because of COVID. We have a lot of choice, whether you do it from another country, when you do it. Maybe those young people took the Monday off at the spa, but they like to work on a Saturday when there's no pressure and they're not getting a ton of other emails coming in. So again, I think take a look at what you're capable of doing. Who's your community? What's the reality of making money at something? And also working longer. I mean, John and I will never retire. We love what we do. I think I'll do less administrative work as I get older. But one of the key things that we see is if people have savings that's invested that will eventually be used to create an income for them when they stop working, is they start using it too early. So at age 60 or 65, if you've got a life runway of 30 years, that amount of money you've saved has a lot of pressure on it. It's going to have to deal with in case you get sick or there's emergencies, but it's also got to last for 30 years. If you maybe want to stop your full-time stressful job at age 60, as long as you're debt-free, if you take on a job where you're making less money that at least covers your lifestyle, the amount of money you have at age 60, if you invest it and you let it grow until 70, now, average life expectancy is 20 or 25 years. So you have less number of years that you're going to need that money to create income for you. And you're giving it a longer period of time to grow. So there's a really easy hack called the rule of 72. So if you take what you're going to make on your investment, let's say 7%, and you divide it into 72, that's how fast your money will double. So we're ignoring tax at the moment, but your money would double in 10 years. So if you at age 60 have $500,000 and you can make enough money to cover your lifestyle, you don't even have to necessarily save anymore, and you could make 7% on your money, then your money will go from $500,000 to $1 million. And now you'll have $1 million at age 70 and CPP versus having $500,000, using it at age 60 and it needing to last you that huge amount of time.
Right.
So there's the flexibility. And you could say, okay, well, you'll see people working the starter at a golf club, right? Maybe they can't afford to be at the golf club anymore as a member, but they'll be a starter through volunteerism. But there are lots of things that you could do part-time that you might really, really enjoy. You just don't start using those assets to live off of you.
Right. That's great advice. Yeah. That's really good. So tell me a little bit about the retreats that you run.
Well, there's two different types of retreats. One is on self-connection, because what I've really found over many, many years of listening to people have all these emotions about money is that it comes back to self-connection. And Jennifer, this is what you do with some of your women.
Yeah.
If you really believe that you have a purpose, you have a gift, you have something that is meaningful for you to do in this life, money will not be defining you. Money will become a tool to either create a life that gives you a lot of joy, or to maybe solve a problem in the world through some sort of philanthropic work. Or maybe you want to start your own business, so your money's going to help you to do that. But it really comes back to, if you believe, so the three human lies: I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, and I'm not enough. That's all humans. Their issues fall into one of those buckets. So if we really can get away from the fact that I do have something to give and money doesn't define me, then we can start to look at money as a tool. So on the retreats with other facilitators, we work towards self-connection. The other things we might work towards are entrepreneur retreats, where not everybody wants to scale anymore. Some women just want to have a lifestyle business. What's wrong with that? You know, there's statistics to show that it might be better to have 1 million small businesses than 1,000 really large businesses. From a sustainability point of view, how hard it is on our earth, the number of jobs it creates, all that sort of thing. So it's working with people where they are and where they want to get to, and allowing them to the space to look at it from a different perspective versus, I'm a loser if I don't build this business into a $3 million, $5 million, $10 million a year revenue. What if it's $150,000 of revenue? But you have time to see your kids, walk them to school, look after your parents, or, you know, whatever it might be. There's so many different ways to look at this. And it comes down to believing that we are worthy.
Yeah, I love that so much, because I see this like firsthand in the women, in the Maven Collective group and the women that I work with. Most of the women who are, setting out to do something in their next chapter, so they've had a long corporate career, they're like, okay, I want to do something that feels meaningful. They're not doing it from a sense of, I'm trying to make money, right? Like, it's like, of course I need to get paid. And of course I need to, be able to cover my expenses and all of that. But they're doing it because they want to make a difference somehow. They want to solve a problem. They want to make life better in some way. They want to leave a legacy. And I love what you just said. Like, it doesn't need to be a $2 million, or 10X or any of that type of stuff. It can be simply something that just feels meaningful and rewarding to you. And obviously finances is a part of that reward. But being able to do something that can help you, that fills you from a purpose and meaning standpoint, and also pays your bills, that's just it. That's just good enough. So I love that you said that.
I don't know whether you hear this a lot, Jennifer, but I also hear a lot from women when they are at that stage in their life, where they're wanting to have impact, and they will say to me, well, this is what I want to do, and it's not about the money. It doesn't matter if I get paid. And I actually challenge them on that, because I was taught from a very young age with a coach that I worked from that money is just an exchange of energy. And, when you are an old chick, as you said, old chicks know shit, you do have a lot of wisdom and experience and knowledge. And why wouldn't we get paid for that exchange of energy? And why feel bad about that? So I encourage people to have a mantra where we say, I really want to have impact and make a difference. And I would like to also have some of that abundance come back to me, and stop feeling badly about having impact and making money at it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So I don't think we should.
Well, and that's interesting, because I know a lot of women downplay their experience, their knowledge, their wisdom, their insight, they downplay that, right? Like it's like, oh, well, I just kind of did what I had to do. So they don't see it as valuable. So the idea that they can exchange that as a value contributor is foreign to them, right? But this is the place where I come from. I'm like, all of that wisdom and experience and knowledge was hard earned. You didn't get it for free. It wasn't like it landed in your lap. You went out and created the situations and the circumstances and conquered the challenges and the obstacles. Like that was the cost that you paid for that, and you need to hold that as a value, like as a huge value from now, which you can contribute in different ways. But yes, there has to be that energy exchange. And I think that's really, really important.
And you have to believe that you are valuable, right? That's what exactly, this is what you're saying, because you have to have that as a value, and then you have to believe that you are valuable. I mean, you look up a LinkedIn profile on some of these women and they will say to you, oh, well, what can I do now? And you say, are you kidding me? Like you look them up and then you go, holy smokes, like, wow, this is a superwoman. And something happened to her along the way that she was told she's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And, or maybe you feel guilty that you had this big corporate career. So why should you make some money once you're not in there? But I also believe as humans, we often don't value advice and work unless we are paying the person for it.
That is so true. That is so true. And, the other part is like, if you don't see value, like if you don't see value in that experience that you have, like how can other people see value in it? Right. And so if you're trying to go out there and do something, you know what I mean? You have to see it first before other people can see it. Like that's what's really important. But, we've been taught as women, again, like culturally, that it's about the giving, right? Like, and we're horrible at receiving, like really bad at receiving. I see this all the time, every day in the women that I work with. They can give and give and give, but they are really, really bad at receiving. And I mean, I had to learn that lesson, right?
Yep. No, absolutely. And sometimes we need to switch up assets. I mean, I was working with another woman where her house was her major asset, and she was loath to give it up because she thought renting was embarrassing. So we had to unpack why that was. And then we also talked about the fact that in New York, another very expensive city, 70% of people rent. And nobody's embarrassed in New York about renting. Right. So why are we embarrassed? But basically, we got to the point where I said, your house is your security. I 100% agree with you. And now it's going to be your security in providing an income for you for the rest of your life. It's just not going to be in a house form anymore.
Yeah.
And so this light bulb went off that she actually had tons and tons of money. It had just been tied up in this asset that she couldn't access and didn't have the sort of emotional freedom to think it was okay to tell her friends that she was selling her house.
Yeah.
Comes down to value, right? Like it's crazy.
Well, which is why we need outside help sometimes, because we can't see our own situations clearly. Like you can't read the label from inside the jar, right? So when you have somebody like you who's sitting on the other side can help you see that, oh, look, you're actually not as bad off as you think you are, or there's a number of different options and possibilities for you to be able to approach this thing. I think is just so incredibly important. So, and I love the way you do what you do. Right? Like that it's not just about financial wealth, that there's all of like the other 6 pillars. Because that is the foundation of a well-rounded life. Like whenever you're out of balance in one place, you'll feel it. Yeah.
And I think, actually just to sort of close things off, like I think about my mother's generation and how much volunteerism they did. And they never got paid for the hours and hours and hours that they did. So I think, part of our hang up from our generation is the fact that our mothers did all this stuff and didn't get paid.
So true.
And now, in a way, we're demanding that we get paid, and we should. And, I was also listening to this woman, I think she was 90 and she's a doctor. And she was talking about how, people retire. And she was saying what a shame that is to completely retire, because when you are that sort of pivotal age 65, you still have so much wisdom and stuff to share. And so I also encourage women who, want to quit their stressful jobs, that maybe you work until you're 80. Like I came from a house where my grandparents worked well into their 80s, not full time, but they loved what they did and it gave them so much financial freedom. So there is nothing with working up until you're even age 80. If it brings you joy, you're interacting with younger people, you have a reason and a purpose to get up. And so it's getting rid of this old thinking that it's this or not that, or living together. You know, my girlfriends and I laugh that if we're all going to be widowed, we can hardly wait to go find some house and like we'll all be roomies together again and hire some, you know, chef or whatever it might be. But in the States, they're creating communities like this. And they're starting to actually on the East Coast of Canada, where it's specifically for sort of 55 to 65-year-olds to come together and live in community. You can eat, you can share residences or whatever, because a lot of people are divorced or they live away from their families and they're lonely. So there's so many ways to work on this. Or if you want to go to Florida, share a place. Why does it have to be on your own? Why does it have to be one or nothing at all?
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, I think that actually the concept of retirement is completely asinine. So this idea that we work, then we just stop. We have no purpose, no reason to get out of bed, right? Like I plan to work on until the day I leave this planet, right? Because I love what I do. But like this idea that, you know, like I said, we spend all of our lives working and then we just automatically stop. We have no sense of purpose, no reason to get out of bed. I mean, and you start to see people decline very rapidly when they retire, right? So the idea that you can have a second or third career or second or third business, like, so you should, if you love what you do, you should absolutely do it. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Even sitting on boards, right? There's so many paid positions like that. And so, Anyway, well, I think you're never going to retire because you're going to hang out with super awesome women.
Exactly.
And you're going to laugh and giggle and have fun.
Right.
Exactly.
Where can people find more about your retreats, your company? I'll make sure that gets in the show notes so people can reach out to you.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, there's libbywildman.com that will also lead you to Davis Ray, where I'm head of education and financial planning and estate planning. There should be some resources there on LinkedIn. I put out a video every week that just talks about finances and some things to think about. You know, some of the things people have to talk about is, should you even be doing an RSP? And that really depends on your income and whether you're an entrepreneur or not. Should you be doing a TFSA? Now there's this new housing savings buckets. There's so many different buckets that I encourage you to either find a friend who's really smart and wants to run your circle, or get everybody to read a book, or reach out to people that will come. Like I've gone on a Zoom call for a financial group, and I'm the expert for an hour. I'm happy to do that.
Right. I love that.
You know, and I think lots of people are.
Love that. Okay, great. Well, thank you for this conversation. I think there's so many amazing nuggets of wisdom shared here. So to those of you listening, no matter where you are on your financial journey, I am sure that there is some nugget of wisdom that you are walking away from this conversation. For me, I love those 7 perspectives of wealth. I think that's genius. So thank you, Libby. Thank you so much for this conversation. And to all of you listening, if you love what you heard today, please leave us a rating, a review, or better yet, pass this episode along to a friend or somebody that you'd like to start a financial circle with. So until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Old Chicks No Shit podcast. If you like what you heard, the greatest compliment you could give us would be to comment below and subscribe. Or better yet, you could share this episode with a friend, a relative, or somebody you think could get something out of it. And remember, midlife is not the beginning of the end. It's simply the beginning of your kick-ass next chapter.